One of my 2023 goals is to reconnect with classic literature. I used to read basically solely classic literature for a few years, and I've really enjoyed diving into the world of new release. Now I think it's really time to have a more balanced approach. So what I'm trying to do with this video is to produce a list of classics to read in 2023 as sort of, a year-long TBR. Now, I've got 23 classics here that I want to read. I'm going to read more classics than that. I'm going to be running a couple of readathons or be involved in running a couple of readathons that require me to read classics. And I haven't chosen books for those readathons necessarily. And also, I just want the freedom to randomly feel like reading a certain author and plow into them. If I'm still going to be reading at this ridiculous rate of 20 books a month, I think 4 or 5 of them should be classics. And then the rest can be new releases or recent releases. I've started by picking a few classics to reread. I think this is something about a classic that we don't do enough of, is reread them. And I think classics are classics not because they're necessarily better books, but because they're infinitely more rereadable than other books. Because you can pick up on more themes because they're complex enough to get more stuff out of it. And the first book that I want to reread is Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I got to be honest, I don't remember a lot about this. A bunch of boys on an island, piggy. It was a bit of a horrible dystopian. Horrible dystopian is a genre I like. Specifically horrible dystopian. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Such a long time ago since I read Harper Lee. I remember loving this book. But since reading it, my ideas around racism and my opinion on race has changed. Also, I've read Go Set a Watchman since reading To Kill a Mockingbird. If you've read it, you've read it. Definitely, I think that expands on things that are in To Kill a Mockingbird. But just being able to look for those things, be able to look for the hints that I maybe didn't quite pick up as well the first time. Since joining BookTube, one author that I have really grown to absolutely love is James Baldwin. BookTube loves Baldwin, and Giovanni's Room and If Beale Street Could Talk are two absolutely amazing books. Prior to BookTube, I had only read one Baldwin, and that was Go Tell It on the Mountain. And I don't remember what I thought of it, but Goodreads tells me that I only gave it 1 star. And that's just not true for amount of Baldwin's ability. So I basically want to give it a chance to redeem itself. Why did I not like this book? Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy is a timeless classic. It has one of the most iconic lines in literature to begin with. Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in their own way. Tolstoy's arguments about socialism and workers' rights and profit sharing were quite revolutionary at the time and part of a greater dialogue. And I think it would be interesting to reconnect with some of the root socialist ideas. Also, this is a messy woman story as well at its heart, and I adore a messy woman story. 3 books I've always wanted to talk about together and to maybe do a single review of all 3 together are Machiavelli's The Prince, George Orwell's 1984, and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. And I'm going to make the time to do that. I just think that these are 3 texts that really speak to each other. And when I was looking at other classics that I could potentially add to this list, I saw Ray Bradbury's classic Fahrenheit 451, and I just figured that this just goes nicely as well. It just fits. It feels right. It's a good time to reread Bradbury and maybe see if he adds anything to the discussion that these 3 books will clearly be talking about. Time to move on to books that I have never read. One thing that I would really like to do is examine some classics by Black authors. I have not read very proportionately in my classics, and I sort of made a bunch of excuses that, there just aren't as many, but when you look for them, there are a lot. So I'm fixing that up by reading these books. Clotilde the President's Daughter by William Wells Brown. Incident in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Jacobs. The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass by Frederick Douglass. 20 Years a Slave by Solomon Northup. Hitting a Straight Lick with a Crooked Stick by Zora Neale Hurston. and The Street by Anne Petty. All of those authors, except for Zora Neale Hurston, are new authors to me. Zora Neale Hurston is an author who can write a book, and I should have just read more of her work by now, so it just made sense to put one of her books on this list. I think that I'll probably read these books for one of the Black History Months. I think it's very important to read Black literature. I think it's important to read a variety of literature from a variety of places. I think that there's only so much you can learn by reading authors that have similar backgrounds, and I just love doing that. I also think that focusing on Black literature for a short period is much better than to just randomly picking up one or two books every so often. I think that what I might do is, if I continue to do this project, is in 2024, I might pick Japanese literature or somewhere else, wherever takes the fancy, and just focus on a particular population to sort of try and learn a bit about their history and about their people and about their literature most importantly. Now, lastly, I have 9 books that I just want to read. There's no rhyme or reason for picking these. They're my magpie books. They're shiny objects, and I want them to build my nest. It's a bad metaphor. Plato's The Republic. I have never read Plato, and I'm not sure that he is an author that will work for me. But why write off an author before I've tried them, especially Plato? There's definitely this big school of thought that philosophical books are interesting. There's definitely a lot of fans out there for them, and I don't really like philosophy books when they're novels, but Plato wasn't writing novels. My big criticism about authors such as Kafka and Camus is that they have put these ideas in a novel instead of just talking about these ideas, which is clearly what they wanted to do. I've criticized books for doing it. Why don't I look at the books that I'm picking rather than blaming the author? L.P. Hartley, The Go-Between. I don't really know why I haven't got to L.P. Hartley yet, but I haven't. It's been a book that's been on my mental TBR for so long, and just putting it down there and committing to some point reading it next year, it's about time. There's been a number of good reviews of this classic. Another book that I've just never made the time to read is The Decameron. I think of this as sort of like the Italian version of the Canterbury Tales. It is, I think, 100 short stories. 10 people tell 10 short stories is, I think, the framing of it. Maybe it's probably more accurate to call it the Renaissance Italy, Arabian Nights. Whatever it is, it's time to give that one a shot, because I feel like that potentially would be the most famous classic that I have not got to. Osamu Daizu's No Longer Human is a book that I have had on my TBR for years and years, and I have never got to it. I don't really remember what it's even about, but it's there. It has an interesting cover, and I really haven't thought too hard about picking this one. It's definitely got that feel of I'm either going to love it or I'm going to hate it, and I'm really happy to take that sort of chance on a book. If I don't like it, whatever. But if I do like it, awesome. One of the authors that I have slowly grown to love every Victober is Elizabeth Gaskell, and I would like to add Wives and Daughters to my list because it's another Gaskell book that I haven't read yet. So there's that's it. I like it. I like Elizabeth Gaskell. That's the reasoning there. In January, I have a potential buddy read of Amy Levy's novel Reuben Satched, and at the same time, the FOMO Book Club is reading Daphne du Maurier's Jamaica Inn. Stoner by John Williams is a very popular classic on BookTube, and I really thought that with a title like that it was about drugs, but it's not. It's about a man called Stoner. That's all I know. I'm just surrendering to BookTube hype here. Lastly, one of my all-time favorite authors is George Eliot. She is immensely talented, but I have stalled on my reading of Eliot at Romola. I DNF'd it a few years ago. I didn't find it a bad book. I just found it a little bit too much at the time. Eliot requires a level of concentration to get the most out of her work, and I'm definitely of the opinion that if I'm not in the headspace to give Eliot that mental, the effort that she is required, the thinking that that is required to understand her books, the contemplation, that I shouldn't read her, because when I do give her that contemplation, when I do read her books and are able to take in everything that she is saying, she's so talented. I mean, there is a really strong argument to say that she is the most talented author ever to have graced this earth, which is a ridiculous statement when you consider how long there have been people writing for and so on and so forth. But just immensely talented, and the fact that I am stalling on this book is a concern. So I think I want to put this on the list as you must just rip the bandage off, read it. Even if you don't enjoy it, we're going to move on to another George Eliot, and I can always reread this book if I don't like it. There's nothing wrong with reading a book, not liking it, and then coming back to it in 5 years' time and completely changing your mind. In fact, as readers, that's probably what happens quite a lot of the time. That's what I'm doing with James Baldwin. So that is my 23 classics I want to read in 2023. I definitely want to get to other classics, but that is the sort of the beginning list. I would like to start to review more classics on this channel. Sort of vaguely would like to have this idea that once a fortnight you get a classic review from me, and once a fortnight you get a new release review from me. I think that's where I'd like to see my channel going in 2023, but I haven't been able to stick to a schedule for the past 18 months, and I don't really know if that's going to change. Definitely we just want to see some more classics and really blend these classics and new releases, because that's what I want to be reading. So that's the goal. Let me know, are you trying to read more classics in 2023? Are you trying to read less classics because you're such a classic hound? Let me know, and let me know what you think of any of these books. If you think I like them, if you think I've made a bad choice, or if you think there's something awesome that is missing from my list. Like, comment, subscribe, all the things. Click here, there's a video. I don't know which one it'll be yet, so whatever.